Thank you for joining us today. And at this time, I'd like to introduce our panel. To my left is Mike McCroby. He's the president of the Eastern Division for Builders First Source. They're one of the nation's largest build material dealers. Next to him is Jennifer Warner. Jennifer is economist and director of economic development for the Florida Realtors. Next to Jennifer is Don Vizio. He's the chief administrative officer for Tibbits Lumber, leading independent build material in Florida. And Don has 25 plus years in the Florida marketplace. No one probably understands Florida more than Don. Next to him, we're very privileged to have Thad Lynch. He is the president of the Greater Orlando Builders Association, one of the largest in the state of Florida. And he's also the president of J&S Homes, a premier home builder in the area. And then next to that is Debbie Rodriguez. Debbie is a leader in labor in Central Florida. She's the CEO of Competitive Edge Partners and considered one of the top prime contractors in the construction industry. This is going to be a tremendous panel. We have a lot to discuss today, and we're just going to dive right into it. My first questions for all the panelists, I'd like you to take a minute and tell us in a sentence or two about yourself, but then I'd like you to tell us what you think the two biggest challenges facing folks here in the state of Florida are. Start with Mike.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks, Don, for inviting me to join the panel. I look forward to today's discussion. And as he said, I run the East Division for Builders First Source. In our world, we have 3 divisions across the country, and my division is Florida, straight up the coast into New England. So it's about 250 locations for our company, and I've been in the industry 25 years. I've been with Builders First Source about 6.5 years. And before that, I spent 19 years with 84 Lumber. So I've always been on this side of the business, the distribution, manufacturing, and installation for our customers and builders. When I look at the two challenges, it's really from our perspective, affordable housing is absolutely number one. The population in Florida continues to grow at a rapid rate. The only state that's more at this point is Texas. But we have to continually focus on keeping homes affordable, especially for first-time home buyers. The second is really home insurance. When I did the research, it seems like the insurances in the state of Florida is 3 times more than the national average. So we have to think about all these factors as a collective group when we're strategically aligning to make sure we can continue to keep Florida, at the top of the list of the housing market.
Mike, just one quick follow-up. You serve a large swath of the country. Is business outside of Florida good?
It's consistent, and it is in pockets. We see some markets that are strong. Florida remains strong. Texas remains very strong. Some of the bigger MSAs are not as strong as those two. They're consistent. But we're also seeing some of the demand lightening markets. So, we're adjusting our business model in those markets to try to be as aggressive as we can to find opportunity where it's available.
Thank you, Mike. Jennifer, welcome. We're so happy to have you here. You're the economist in the room. You've got the numbers. Tell us a little bit about yourself and give us from your perspective in the Florida Realtors, what do you think are the two biggest challenges?
Well, thank you guys for having me. So as we mentioned, I'm an economist. Nobody knows what that is. All that is we do the housing statistics throughout the state of Florida. Florida Realtors is the largest professional trade organization in the state of Florida, and our association is the largest state organization throughout the whole country. We surpassed California and Texas in the last couple of years in terms of membership, and we serve over 240 realtor members every year. And what we do is compile all those housing statistics and provide it to our members and the media, and kind of help people have an agnostic view of what's happening in the housing market. Outside of the headlines, we try to set the story straight in terms of what's really going on. As far as our shop view of the biggest challenges that are facing Florida's market right now is the dearth of existing home inventory. So people who are current owners and they have those low mortgage rates, there's that locked-in effect, which we'll talk a little bit more about what that means and how it impacts the market, but we're really focusing on that. And then also for buyers coming into the market, high interest rates meeting high prices. We normally have relief on one side of that equation, and right now we're hitting it both at the same. So those are the two big challenges that we're focused on right now in our shop.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, Don. You and I go back a long time, as you do with most people in this room. You were on the wholesale side of the equation for the last couple of years. You've been an executive with Tibbits. From your standpoint, what are you seeing as your two biggest challenges?
Well, first, good morning. I'm Don Vicio, the Chief Administrative Officer for Tibbits Lumber. We have 9 locations in the state of Florida, including door, truss production, as well as foot-line lumber yards. I've got 33 years experience, the last 26 being in Florida, and I've held a variety of management positions with Georgia Pacific, Blue Links, and lately with Tibbits Lumber. Two biggest challenges, Don, I see is, first is labor, and the availability of labor to build homes. It's been an issue for a long time, but some of the latest impacts on the immigration policy has made it even more challenging. Although I do think that's going to be somewhat short-term, as markets are efficient. I think labor will come here, albeit at a much, much higher wage rate. The second impact is mortgage rates. Mortgage rates approaching and hitting 8% are really making affordability of housing challenging for a lot of people, and I think that's really suppressing the business today.
Thank you, Don. Thad Lynch, you're the president of one of the biggest home builder associations in the state of Florida and one of the best areas. Plus you're building wonderful homes. Tell us about yourself and what do you view the two biggest challenges?
Well, thank you for having me. I've fortunate enough to serve as the president of Greater Orlando Builder Association. Over 700 members. We are advocates for, roughly over 40,000 employees here in Central Florida. The topics we're speaking about today obviously impact a lot of people in this room and outside of this room. On the side, when I'm not advocating on behalf of GOBA, I also build homes. From a wide swath of price points, anywhere from a luxury custom homes down to that first-time home buyer home and even rental homes. So we're trying to service multiple buyer needs. As far as our challenges, I feel like Mike, Jennifer, Don have kind of covered the bases. But what I would say, in addition, obviously, affordability is a battle. Interest rates, cost of building, cost of land, cost of development, all play a factor. There's a war on all fronts, I think, on affordability. In addition to that, and I'm sure we'll speak more about it, but from municipalities, jurisdictional and governmental regulations have been a huge challenge for the builders and developers, as far as just doing things within reasonable timelines, doing things within reasonable costs. They're also one of those key factors that are driving up our affordability issues.
Thank you, Thad. And finally on the end is Debbie Rodriguez, and Debbie is the CEO of Competitive Edge Partners and Consultant. And I know no one in Central Florida who has her pulse more on the labor scene than Debbie and her group. Plus you're outside the state. Debbie, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you see as the two biggest challenges.
So I am Debbie Rodriguez, and in 2008 I started a skilled staffing company because we were actually in the economy downturn, and everybody thought, I think you're nuts for opening up a company in 2008 that focuses on the construction industry. And I literally said, well, if I can make it through this, I can make it through anything. So here we are over 15 years later, and we're still doing well. In the process, I got frustrated with the industry and the lack of educating our trades. So I started my own subcontracting company so I could keep my manpower of over 400 people basically working, not just with our clients, but also working independently with us on my subcontracting arm. And then in 2015, I became part of the ABC board, the Association of Builders and Contractors board, and developed a nonprofit called iBuild. iBuild is all about the skilled trades and your prison systems, your females, just non-traditional paths. So my two biggest challenges, also being somebody that just built a house, it's really just finding good quality people to show up for work. I mean, I think our house was delayed by more than 6 months just because the subcontractors had no control over their trades, and having people show up for work, they showed up when they wanted to show up. So I think the accountability in the trades themselves is very much lacking on both sides, not it's residential and commercial. And I also think the wages, and I feel that we need to make education far more part of the trade. So having them more educated then be able to receive better wages. So I think that we need to together as a state work on helping us educate our tradesmen and women to understand the importance of the work they do. And we lead them, we don't do the work. So they have to understand how important it is to do the work correct. Being a home builder next to me, I mean, your frustration is probably every day with your subs not showing up for work and the quality of their work. I mean, you're building $1 million home and you have, non-$1 million subs. How do we get our subs and our workforce up to that level, I think is a huge issue in Florida.
Thank you, Debbie. Well, we're going to dive, Jennifer, we're going to put you on the spot right off the bat. Would you please give us an update on the Florida housing market and the national housing market? And really, what's your opinion for the rest of the year and for 2024? But most importantly, where do you see the trends?
Sure. So happy to jump right into that. I'm going to give you guys kind of a story about how we got here really quick through the lens of my kids, right? So when we were coming through the early parts of the pandemic, it was like the Fed was very scared of everything freezing up like it did during the GFC last time. And so they gave us a bunch of sugar and they turned on the music for a big game of musical chairs. And that's what 2021, 2022 was. We had a lot of froth in the market because we had cheap loans, and then we had a lot of unlocked migration ability. And so we really just had a loud game of musical chairs. That stopped obviously in 2022 and continuing now. And so for people who are holding a chair, that's where they're sticking. And there is no more sugar in the market. We do not have that froth that's supported by those low interest rates. So that's kind of how we got into this situation. We had a very hot market now that's cooled, but there's still embers of that market in the hands of people who hold those low interest rate mortgages. So what that means is for existing inventory, that's where we're starting to see the really big slowdown in terms of people not wanting to list and sell because then they have to re-enter the market where we are today, and it's obviously a lot less favorable. So nationally, we're seeing a huge decline in existing home sales, 23% down year over year, obviously significantly lower than that when you go back to where we were pre-COVID. The other thing that's happening, though, is because we don't have a lot of supply on that side, the prices are still remaining high. Nationally, the numbers are about $407,000 is the median sale price throughout the country. Right now in Florida, it's $415,000. P.S. We've never been like that in Florida. We've never been above the national average like that. So that's kind of what's setting the scene. The other lens that we look through is not just these big numbers, but through the lens of the monthly payment for a typical buyer. So back before everything went crazy, the typical monthly mortgage payment in Florida for a typical house was about $1,300. Today, it's $2,100, and that's a 62% increase in just 3 years. And I don't think wages have gone up that high. So we definitely have a mismatch of people being able to afford what a typical house would cost today. The other thing that's happened is the price value of our housing market has gone up almost 60% in just 3 years. That's a huge change to go that quickly. And we've actually, I'm not sure if any of you guys saw the Zillow report that came out yesterday about how the Florida housing market is valued second to New York. We've never been in that position ever. So our reputation is starting to change throughout the country in terms of, is Florida still affordable? That was always our selling point, and that's starting to shift. The other thing that we're paying attention to is the impact of property insurance, as Mike had mentioned. We don't have strong data to really know what's happening, but anecdotally we're seeing renewals are coming at 40 to 60% above where they were before. So if you factor that in, that could be multiple $100s a month more. Even if you had a low mortgage payment from before, you tack that on, now you might start being in an unaffordable situation. So even for existing home buyers who aren't entering into today's market, they're still being impacted by that issue. So what we're paying attention to is affordability, not only for people entering into our market, but also sustaining the people who are here, who are dealing with these insurance issues. And we are starting to see a change in migration. People are moving from South Florida up to Central Florida. People from other parts of Florida are moving out of the state into Georgia and the Carolinas. So while we did have very strong in-migration numbers last year, we're anticipating maybe a different story next year.
Okay, and that's where I was, one follow-up. I noticed the last month cash sales were down 10.4%. And that's a big number, and most of that was from cash buyers coming out of the state, coming into the state. Mm-hmm. Are you guys starting to see, because of what you said, we're getting close to New York and California levels in housing, and a lot of that anecdotally, I know the insurance is a big deal. Mm-hmm. We've all felt it. Are you starting to see that affect the migration into the state?
So the way we track migration is through driver's license data. So whenever you move into our state, you have to exchange your driver's license from where you came from to Florida. And so we pay attention to that monthly when that comes out. And we are starting to see a slowdown in people who are moving into Florida from out of state. We still see strong feeders from New York, California, even parts of the Rust Belt coming in, still seeing strong in-migration from Canada. And those are the people who are going to be able to circumnavigate what's happening with the interest rates and the property insurance, because if they're able to cash out and buy in Florida in cash, they don't have to deal with interest rates or property insurance if they don't want to. So that's what we're paying attention to in terms of the impact of cash. But I will say the hard part for us is we don't know what's really cash and what's mirage cash, where it looks like it up front, but then there's a loan underneath. So we've never really had a strong ability to discern between the two, but we are seeing cash is still pretty present, even though it's been going down, and we're about 30% of all deals are cash deals. That's still well above where we were pre-pandemic. So we're still seeing a lot of cash in our market, but likely less due to investment buyers who normally are cash, and more from people who are coming in out of state and using cash to get around our problems here.
And one more follow-up.
Sure.
Last month we were at 3 months of inventory. You talked about people being house locked. Okay, and they're house locked because of various reasons. We're not seeing foreclosures or returns go up because people are staying in houses. But what are you seeing in the rental markets? Because we're starting to hear whispers that the rental market, the Airbnb market, could be a little oversold. Are you guys having any concerns about the rental markets being oversold?
So we don't have a ton of transparency because we don't track rental data, but anecdotally, again, like we're thinking about people who are buying for rental. The only whispers we're really hearing about is softening of rent. People were able to push rents really strongly over the last 2 years, and it feels like we're hitting that cap of affordability on rental. So for people who are looking to keep pushing at the same rate that we used to, I don't think that's going to be as strong. But in terms of, where we are with foreclosures and distress, like we don't have that really baked into what we're seeing out there. And so hoping for a wave of supply to come from that isn't likely to happen. And that's kind of help keep those prices up, because if there's not a lot to choose from, 3 months of inventory is double what it was 18 months ago, but it's still well below what we would consider a balanced market. So sellers still have the upper hand right now.
And then the final question. This time next year, will the housing market be up, flat, or down? Or are we going to be constricted into a tight selling space because of inventories and interest rates? What's your view, Jennifer?
So my crystal ball is, in terms of existing, we're kind of stuck here. That we're calling this a stalemate market. Where we're seeing demand go is into new construction, because obviously those are the houses that don't have a pre-existing mortgage to let go of, and builders have a lot of ability to offer incentive. So in terms of where demand is going to be going, it's going to be going into new construction, and we're already starting to see that. The challenge, obviously, these guys are going to mention is making sure there's enough product, enough inventory, and in the right places that people want to be.
And that's what we're going to have to explore, because if when we got to 1.5 million, 1.6 million in inventory starts across the country, we couldn't handle it. Debbie Rodriguez, a lot of people talk about labor, and that's your game.
It is.
One of the big issues here in the state of Florida is the passage of House Bill 101, in which Florida essentially criminalized the hiring of undocumented immigrants. It basically took the approach where it would put the employer, if they knowingly hired someone, at risk of losing license, penalties, all kind of other issues. And if someone helps an undocumented immigrant, could be charged even with trafficking.
Yep.
Have you seen any effects from House Bill 101? And what's your view on the labor market, given, we've heard from Jennifer that the housing market has cooled some. So you would think the labor market would have improved and we would now be seeing wages coming down and more propensity. Tell us your view on where we're at with labor.
So I actually come from migrant parents. My parents came here undocumented from Cuba. Obviously, they're documented now. I'm first generation born in the United States. So obviously, there's Venezuela, what's happening in Venezuela, and they're all coming here undocumented. And unfortunately, they are working for subs of subs because the people up here will abide by all of the rules that the government has. We all e-verify, we all do that, but nobody in this room can't sit there and say that they don't have a sub underneath them that may have undocumented employees. So yes, there's been we've saw crews, that are working out on our projects. We've seen crews get cut in half. So therefore, the production isn't being met. The job sites aren't being done on time. When you lose half of your workforce pretty much overnight, because it's really what happened when they put the bill in place, everybody left Florida that wasn't here legally and went to other states to get work. So it is definitely affecting us. And as far as wages, the ones that are here legally are now demanding more money because they are here and they are here documented. So you're seeing a lot of I have Venezuelan workforce that literally have very little, the skills that we've taught them, and they're asking for far more money than I've ever seen anybody ask for, and they're getting it in other places. So I think both sides are happening. You have the labor shortage because people that are undocumented have left this market, and you also have the people that are legal here are now saying, well, I'm worth more money now because I am here legally. So both of those things are happening.
Can you quantify, and I know this anecdotally, quantify in your view the impact on the labor market, that negative impact, and in your view this has had? Have we lost 10, 15% of that labor? What's your view?
Oh, you've definitely lost at least 10% of that labor. I mean, literally, as soon as the law was passed, and I don't know that people in the room knew this, but there's several job sites that actually, there was a stand-down day that happened on a Wednesday right after this whole law happened. And thank God in Central Florida, we didn't see the hit, but down in South Florida and along that coast, there was job sites that had hardly anybody show up for work on that day where they actually had the stand down, and those were all undocumented workers that didn't show up. So the impact that happens, again, Central Florida didn't feel the impact as much because I do believe that a lot of our companies here do everything the way they're supposed to or have enough protection in place, but down south it affected them dramatically. I think that we've lost at least 10% to 15% of the workforce, absolutely.
Debbie, I'm going to ask you a similar question I asked Jennifer. 1 year from now, 1 year from today, will the labor situation in Florida be better, worse, about the same, and will you be paying more or less for labor or about the same?
You're definitely going to be paying more, 100%. Also, it depends on how we as a community get together and start teaching people that are not traditionally in our trades, the trades. So that's the big thing is we in this room and we as leaders in our community have to start getting people that do not look like the normal construction worker and help develop them into a skilled trade. I can't tell you that, I'm sorry, but I have some of the most incredible women that work for me that are in the trades, and a lot of people wouldn't have given them a chance because they were women. So we've got to get within our own heads and stop looking at the stereotypical side of it. So you've got to give second chance, you've got to be a second chance employer. I mean, if they've gone through the prison system and they've gotten training while they've been in the prison system, you got to give them an opportunity to get back to being whole. Also looking at people with high-level disabilities, there's no reason that people with high-level disabilities can't do trade work. So I think that if we could together as a community stop putting our own barriers in place, I think that we could overcome what we're experiencing, but wages are absolutely going to be going up.
Can I just ask one minor question?
No, absolutely not. Go ahead.
Good chance we're going to legalize recreational marijuana. It's already, and a lot of companies, including ours, have quit testing for it.
I would agree with you. I do
Is
think
that-
it's coming right around the corner.
Is testing for marijuana out the door in our industry if we're going to hire people?
So I'm going to be completely transparent. We do swab tests because they are more accurate to what happened in the morning versus what's happened the last month. When we were doing our urine tests, we had tons of people popping for marijuana. So we moved to swabs because obviously it's what you have in your mouth at the current moment. So our drug tests have become obviously more have passed, or so we did have to overlook the marijuana side of it because it is, I'm sorry, but probably half this room has a card. Maybe not half this room, but I mean, it is rampant, and people do have cards, and there's, so I am overlooking that particular drug because at the end of the day, statistically, I think alcohol is just as detrimental having that in your system than having marijuana in your system. So for me, I am kind of overlooking that, but I'm still doing the drug test, making sure that all of the other substances are not part of your makeup.
So I'm assuming if you did the regular traditional test, you'd probably lose about half your workforce.
Absolutely. Beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Don Vicio, you're the administrative executive with Tibbits. You're seeing the high cost of inflation. I've heard the word insurance a few times, but people forget property and casualty insurance. Florida has the insurance crisis. A lot of, got the good folks from Pennsylvania lumbermen right here, and they haven't announced any price decreases lately. First off, how do you manage these increasing costs, and what are you guys seeing from your standpoint? Businesses in this room, how do they manage those costs, and what concerns you as you look out the next year?
Well, we've seen sharp increases in workers' comp insurance for sure. We're trying to manage and mitigate those. Obviously, your mod rate is based on your performance, your safety performance. We've gotten very aggressive in developing safety programs, hiring a dedicated safety manager instead of just having someone do it as a part-time or a hobby. We prioritize employee wellness in everything we do. Safety is our number one priority. We start every meeting with safety. So you really have to take a serious approach to it and not just whitewash it. Property insurance is difficult to get. The cost of health care is going up again. And in a competitive labor market, you have to provide those things. So when we look at our fixed costs as a whole, I mean, they're going up. And the end result is you just can't work on the same margin rate that you've always assumed, right? Margin rates that were acceptable in the past will have you at a break even or losing money today. So the paradigms of what margins were acceptable in the past, you could throw them out the window, and you have to get a margin commensurate with what your fixed costs are. And that's across all businesses. So we're working hard to manage those. We're trying to manage our liability. We've upgraded all of our ELDs on our trucks, onboard cameras to protect our assets and people. So we're managing it very, very aggressively to try to keep those costs in check as best we can. But even in doing that, they're moving up, and we just have to move our margins up in line with what we're seeing.
What's a bigger impact for your company, labor or fixed costs?
Fixed cost.
Fixed cost is a bigger concern.
Mm-hmm. I mean, labor is what labor is, and that's equal for everybody. Whether we have to pay our drivers a little bit more, everyone is. So, but I think some of the fixed costs are the areas where you can manage and work toward having a competitive advantage.
I'm going to sort of bring Mike in this conversation because I'm going to ask you both a question that goes into fixed costs. A lot of the gray-haired folks in this room, like myself and you and Mike, we were at one time used to a higher interest rate environment. Then we had the sugar high, starting like 2016, 2017 of 0 rates, 1 and 2 rates. Now we're at normal rates, 7, 8. Commercial loans 8 and 9. How does a higher interest rate environment, how do you foresee it affecting M&A and expansion from an independent view? And then Mike, I'd like to, you deal with a national group. You're right in that ballpark. But from an independent view, what does that higher interest rate do to your fixed costs?
Well, if you're heavily leveraged, you're in a tough spot. I mean, businesses that run on cash and cash reserves are in a much, much more favorable position. So we're blessed in that regard as a company. So we're not out borrowing a lot of money. So we probably have an advantage. But to those that are leveraged, we're really going to have to work hard. I mean, it's a choice. I mean, you could do better and get a higher rate of return just investing your money than a lot of these businesses ever produced during normal times.
So from your standpoint, you feel like your cash position and where you're at, you're going to have an advantage in the higher rate environment.
Yes.
Mike, a lot of M&A's been going on for the last few years, a lot of consolidation, a lot of hedge fund money. Now we're at higher rates. How does that higher rate environment affect that standpoint of the growth equation in our industry?
From the M&A side?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, from our perspective, and to your point, we focused a lot as our strategic growth on the M&A as part of that curve, that arc we want to be on. And to Don's point, having cash, that continues to be a focus for us, but it's got to be the right fit for our business model, where we're going, cultural alignment, and it's got to move us to number 1 or number 2 if we're not there in the market. So, we're going to take advantage of the situation because we do have cash right now and continue to look at M&A as a growth revenue and opportunity for us moving forward.
Do you think at all levels in that part of the industry, though, there's going to be a little bit more caution? And
Absolutely.
Are you seeing that now?
It has definitely slowed down. There is no doubt that when you looked at 2 years ago and just the number of overall deals and the size of the deals, some of it's slowing down because of the amount of consolidation, and there's just less to consolidate. But just general interest and looking at where we're going in the marketplace, we do believe over the next 2 to 3 years it's going to continue to slow down.
Thank you. Thad, you're president of, once again, one of the largest home builder associations in the state of Florida. You're a luxury home builder. And you've heard a lot of grim news all around you this morning. I'd like to know from a builder standpoint, talk about affordability, insurance rates, all these issues you've heard. How in the hell do you manage? How do you make a profit? How do you even build a home?
That's a heck of a question. I'm starting to second guess career choices. No,
but seriously, you guys have it from all sides now. And how much, I guess the heart of the question is, how much more stress can home builders take before you start seeing real cracks?
Like I said, it does feel like an attack on all fronts, and we've documented and talked about it all. But I will say there's always an equation, and as long as there's a demand and we can make the equation work, we're going to continue to build houses. And now I would say I'm a Floridian. I've been in construction my entire career, 20 plus years. I love Florida. I understand why people want to move here. And we've dealt, we talk about having a normal year. Every year there's extraordinary circumstances and extraordinary years, and we've always found a way, And so as far as home building goes, particularly for new home construction, Jennifer, did, and we do see that the people that are already locked in, are struggling to make that next step. And so as a home builder, we look at different buyer segments, right? First time buyer, and now a lot of us are looking at renters, first move up, second move up, and then getting into those luxury buyers. It makes it harder, I think, for you to make those moves, right? Those move ups. And within, I would say within more so people already here in Florida. And so, Jennifer said something that stuck to me that I wrote down, that is Florida still affordable? And obviously, we still see people coming into the state, and it is a value proposition for them, but is it for the people already here, that already live here, right? Can you make that next step? Can you go from your first starter house to that next house? And so, absolutely a battle. We're always finding ways. I think the bottom line is all these things that impact us ultimately trickle down to the consumer, and what they can actually afford to buy becomes less and less. And that's, whether it's location or it's the actual finished product. And I think that's a sad thing. Obviously we want to build a house, we all want to build homes and provide homes that we're really proud of. But with all these forces, that is getting watered down.
Thad, when you think about your business, you think about interest rates, you think about labor, supply chain issues, and the bureaucracy to build in the state of Florida through local permitting and all that. What gives you the biggest amount of heartburn?
In my backpack over here, I just keep a jumbo size of Tums because, whatever's behind the next door is going to give you heartburn. I would say some of the bureaucracy is most frustrating, right? Sometimes you feel like local governments aren't adhering to laws that were passed, or they're finding ways to circumvent it that ultimately are detrimental to builders, our suppliers, our labor, and ultimately the consumer, right? As far as how they implement impact fees, how they apply impact fees, or I want to say misappropriate, but maybe not appropriate them the way they're intended to be appropriated. And then when they're not going where they need to go, the answer is, hey, let's go ahead and raise them some more. And so that is very frustrating. And they've also found a way, as demand is still here, to make it harder and harder to entitle and develop land. And the process has gotten lengthier through just multiple rounds of red tape that they continue to implement. And it's got more costly, right? And we've got to carry land. We can't develop land. We can't build homes at the same speed and the same rate and turn our dollars as fast as we used to. And that is daunting.
When you hear Jennifer talk about being compared to New York housing, California housing, something that's being said a lot, Florida's not Florida. It's heard it a couple times today. Are you concerned that that the local jurisdictions, the people who are allowing developments, there's a disconnect that they don't understand that they're turning Florida into California and New York, and that we could file things up pretty easy? Does that concern you?
Every day. That local government can mess something up, yes. In full disclosure, my mother worked in the private industry for a long time and then went into public administration, and she was the first one to tell me as I entered into my own career that local governments are the worst run organizations as far as just what are they doing with their money and how are they balancing it and applying it. It worries me. I feel like a lot of times, and I've gotten the opportunity to speak to a lot of local representatives and state representatives on similar topics. A lot of the times their objectives don't align with their own objectives, right? They're talking out of both sides of their mouth. They want affordable housing, yet they're passing laws that make it harder to entitle land, harder to build on land, and they just don't align, right? And they're allowing local governments to add these architectural requirements that just add cost to the house and don't necessarily add value. And so, I see a lot of that, and it is very frustrating. So yes, we can absolutely F it up.
I understand. Mike McCroby, you're not just Florida. You've got the East Coast. I guess sort of tied on these things. Are you a little worried that Florida could turn into New York?
Not yet. Not yet. We really enjoy the Florida market. We continue to look at ways and for ways to grow. I will tell you that it is tougher today for us to find new locations to try to continue to expand our business to support our builders' needs. We've been focusing on that, and it has become more challenging over the last 18 to 24 months. But we do know that Florida, from a starts perspective, is, it's running neck and neck with Texas, correct? I mean, there's still a lot of starts, and to the earlier point, the new home sales, we see that as a great growth avenue for us as we continue to move forward. The affordability is going to come up a lot today, everyone. It's going to continue to come up. It's real, it's there. There's so many things that can impact it, and as Thad said, behind the next door, we're not sure. We're trying to stay ahead of it, and we want to continue to grow in Florida and expand our business, and that's going to be our goal in the short term.
As you think about your business throughout the Eastern Seaboard, Carolinas and Virginia and New York, whatever, because this is important, because part of this discussion is to recognize the things that maybe we need to look at as a state or whatever. Do you see other states regarding fixed costs with insurance and what they're doing and things? Do you see that Florida is losing some of its competitiveness to the Carolinas and those issues? Is it easier to do business, say, in South Carolina, North Carolina, or Georgia than it is Florida?
Yeah, I think the easy answer based on what you've heard today is yes, it is. I still think that when you look at that population that is coming here, at least up until now, it's still a pretty strong number. So, as we look at it, I think we have to all be mindful that we have to work towards identifying the best way to continue to make Florida as attractive as it has been in the past. And there's a lot of different areas that are going to need to be evaluated as we do that. But the easy answer is yes. I mean, it is easier in some of the more northern states to do business right now.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. This question is sort of for all the panelists, and it's going to be a hard question. It's going to require you to get Jennifer's crystal ball out. What's the next big supply chain disruption or next big that no one sees? Maybe not supply chain, but something that's not on the radar that you see that this industry over the next year or so is going to have to deal with. Anybody, who wants to start this out?
I mean, I can start out just to kick it off. And it's been said, but I think we need to bring it up again, and it goes back to the labor piece, not only how it impacts the field, but also how it impacts our manufacturing partners. We had a lot of companies we work with and heavily invest in more efficient machinery, more machinery. They're trying to build capacity for what we think may become if and when the rates do drop. The demand is so high from what we're seeing that you said it earlier, if we get to 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, there's many links in the chain that broke the last time. Us as a company, and I think anybody on the supply side can honestly say that in their entire careers up until that point, we never had to talk with our customers and builders about real allocation. There was always options. Well, we did have to go out and talk with our customers, and we had to make some hard decisions. We think we're better prepared for that, not across all product categories, but most. But our manufacturing partners, even where there is strong demand, are having a problem finding labor to work.
Absolutely. I'd like to jump in on that. What we saw the last couple years as far as supply chain and the disruption that happened, my feeling is that was masking a greater problem, which I think ultimately is labor. I don't think the labor could have handled it anyways if you've got all those materials out there, to be quite frank. And I've had
there's
many
a bottleneck somewhere.
Yeah, I've had
There's gonna be another
many
bottleneck.
business owners, almost thankful they couldn't get their block or they couldn't get, whatever product it was because they didn't feel like they could have handled, the input that was coming through anyways. And so, ultimately labor is always a major concern of mine. I think Debbie hit on some just excellent points as far as finding new avenues, as far as potential labor source, training them appropriately. Obviously with GOBA, that's a huge focus of ours. And something we're constantly focusing on. We want to get into schools earlier and educate and even use charts as far as average salaries and annual salaries to say, hey, you want this career, but you could do this, as a skilled laborer, you can make this and have a good living. That's one. And then, Don, there's always these unforeseen things, and what we always forget, we think, about Florida and, Orange County or even the United States, is that global factors always affect us that, we kind of lose control of. I found out about COVID, not because someone tested positive or, I found out about COVID because I was having interruptions in supply chain from China and Italy. And I was like, well, let me figure out what this COVID thing is. And then lo and behold, it, ends up hitting us here at home really hard as well, a little further down the road. But, I was asking people about it, and they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, look, man, they're shutting down whole provinces in other countries and because of this thing. And obviously it's airborne, it's going to travel. I can tell you, there's the war going on right now that sometimes we seem to put, in the back seat unless we know someone directly impacted, is causing delays on a ton of our developments in Florida and across the country, because one of the two places you can get key components for transformers are out of the Ukraine. And, so the unforeseen is what typically is I'm most concerned about. We can prepare for a lot of these other things, but, war and viruses and pandemics, we can't.
I want to go back to one thing you talked about, Mike, and you see what you see from your prism nationally.
Sure.
The industry, we talked about expansion of manufacturing. When we hit that 1.5, 1.6, touch 1.7, housing starts, and the supply chain collapsed, you would expect an expansion of manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people say because of 2009, higher interest rates, we did not see that expansion. From your standpoint, are you sort of confirming that you did not see the expansion to handle the 1.7, 1.8? Because we continuously hear about mills closing and such as that. Is that what really concerns you?
Yes. I mean, we've always been in a supply and demand market. So as you see the starts go up and down, I mean, we're all charged with running our business as efficiently as we can, back to the fixed costs, back to the being as efficient as you can. And I would tell you, a lot of our manufacturing partners coming towards the end of last year, they were slowing down their production because of the unknown in the marketplace. And when it bounced again, or it didn't go down as far as they thought coming in the beginning of this year, they weren't able to recover. And there's still key manufacturing partners we have that literally can't produce product today. We have 14, 15, 16, 17-week lead times, and some of them are off the market because they don't have enough labor, and it's not an equipment issue, it's not a material issue, it's a labor issue. So, that's why, forecasting and knowing where we're going and the line of communication from the builders through the suppliers and manufacturers is very key to us to make sure that we're set up right for if we see that next run, that they're prepared to be able to produce enough product as we need it. And that's the same for us. As much as we manufacture, we're in the same boat. So that's why we spend a lot of time forecasting with our customers so we can build and train and develop, because we have the same struggles as everybody else.
So Jennifer, goes back to you again. Someone calls you today and say, hey, I want to open a manufacturing plant to build siding here in Orlando. Might won't get the mic. And they call you and say, Jennifer, can you provide us 200 workers?
I would tell you in time. I would tell you not tomorrow. I would probably have to go find them, train them, and get them ready. So I would say with anybody, I mean, I had clients, we had 25, 26 open orders from yesterday for this morning, and just more realistic timeframes. You didn't just end your day and realize, I need 12 people tomorrow. I mean, I don't think we do, which is why I have a business, so I appreciate it. We don't plan very well in the construction industry, but I think they have to plan their work better. We have to be able to have true partnerships with our clients and understand when those peaks and valleys are gonna happen, because, I mean, electricians, carpenters, all of those things, you have to create them, train them, and then get them ready so it doesn't happen overnight. The great thing is that we do have a very robust employment of a bunch of different trades. And as long as people are okay with potentially being able to be okay with a cross-trained person that has multiple skill sets. But no, if you told me you needed 200 people tomorrow, If you were paying in the 20s, I probably could get you that much easier. But if you're paying your typical $14, $15, $16 an hour wages, I probably would tell you it would be very difficult for me to get to that number.
Isn't some of the issue, Don Vistio, though, and you've been on both sides and you got a builder next to, and Mike, you can probably speak to, isn't some of the problem we have in this industry the inefficiency of our builders? The planning, lack of planning? I mean,
Should we
Well, I
let
mean-
Thad take that one?
what I mean, I don't, I'm not, but how many times at your locations do you get called, I need a frame package for tomorrow, I need 10 workers?
Well,
Every day, it's what we do.
And I will even give him a little bit of air cover because especially coming out of the last run, when the lead times were so long, I mean, we were asking for orders 25, 30 weeks ahead of time. And with all of the other issues he had to deal with as a builder just to get that slab in the ground, I mean, it was a revolving door of changes. So I think that the last run taught us a lot about planning. And, you know, from my perspective, I think everybody did get better through the last run because we were forced to get better. We didn't have a choice. If you wanted to build houses, you were making much better decisions because you had to be dialed in to communicate with your suppliers and your manufacturers to get product. So, but I think that coordination, I mean, again, we're a business of people. You know, we're not as technologically strong as we could be and maybe should start working towards when it comes to our industry. But in my mind, there's always going to be opportunities to get better.
Thad, do you think that builders are, you know, do you accept or think that's the wrong premise?
No. I will tell you this. A wise man by the name of Mike Tyson once said, and you guys can finish this if you want, everyone's got a plan until they what? Get punched in the face.
Yep.
And as a builder, you feel like you're facing Mike Tyson almost every day, and you're just getting punched in the face. So, you know, I would say that obviously you always have to have a plan. You know, can we execute to that plan? I think with all the circumstances that happened over the last couple years, I don't think anyone executed their plan, and ultimately a lot of people were still successful, right? You know, and I know of counterparts who had record years, but still missed their projections significantly and felt like they failed. And I'm like, that's the most you've ever done, like, you know. So obviously, as a partner, we always want to project out. It was a cascade effect. Everything that happened in the last couple of years. And everything continued to push, right? One thing I do see a lot of our suppliers and installers doing a lot more of now is just kind of, biting a bullet and really just warehousing more stuff for us in advance, you know? And I can say, hey, this is how many starts I'm going to do over the next, 6 months. And they're ordering out in advance, trying to get out in front of some of these issues. And I would say this year, I believe, is moving a lot smoother through the whole process. We're seeing cycle times reduce, and lead times haven't been as big of an issue for various reasons. Some of it just being more prepared.
Dumb question for the builders and Mike and Don. Right now, if you had to change vendors over a minor cost thing, are you changing vendors or dropping a sub for nickels and dimes, or is everyone still sort of snake bitten, worried about what the future's holding?
Less so today than a year ago, but certainly you're cautious. You're worried about quality of what you get when you get it, as much as the dollars and cents. We'd be hard pressed to make a change with a key vendor for a small savings if that vendor has performed well for us, more so now than ever in the past.
Mike, how do you guys view?
We put a lot of value into our strategic alignment with our manufacturing vendor partners. We balance out. Cost is always a conversation, but we're really looking at the overall quality, performance, their OTIF. We know if they're efficient, then that helps keep us efficient. So we're not going to say that we haven't changed before over cost, but that's not typically our MO. We really want to leverage those relationships and then balance those three areas of the business.
And Thad, as you look at your supplier and subcontractor base, I know there's challenges, but your good subcontractors and suppliers, are you loving, holding them, and squeezing them, or are you saying, I'll drop you?
Well, you know, if anyone wants to submit any bids today, we'll take a look. No, I'm just, I think everyone looks at this differently. I truly believe in establishing those relationships and working through things together. And I've worked with both the companies represented up here, and you know, a lot of it is just you've got to have the capacity before price, and we always want to focus on price. And as builders, we want costs to come down. Obviously, we want some relief on any of these things that have driven up costs, so that we can be more competitive and offer a more competitive value proposition and sell more homes, right? But at the end of the day, as a builder, we don't get paid till that house sells. So if I don't build a house, I'm not getting paid, right? I get to cut everyone else a check every 2 weeks, and things are good. But if I can't get the house done, so capacity is still at the forefront of my mind. I would like to use my partnerships and find solutions to drive costs down, whether that's my own efficiencies or my own payment terms or alternate product that we can use or substitute. I want to always explore those, but I'm not hatchet jobbing guys because for low bids. So.
And Deb, I'm going to turn it differently. You said you had 27 orders fulfilled this morning.
Yep.
Are you picking and choosing the people you do business based on how they pay and how they treat your group?
Absolutely. I have to. Unfortunately, we've gotten to that point where the clients that treat our people as they're part of their own team is hugely important to me. I can't believe it's 2023 and I still have to get phone calls from clients. Well, they don't speak English. Well, it's a female. And it's like, so you're judging a book by its cover and the book hasn't even started working yet. So there's a lot more harder conversations happening too. I'm sorry, but everybody in here can speak Spanish. There's apps everywhere that you guys can communicate effectively with the workforce, because I'm sorry, the workforce is 80% Hispanic now, especially out in the field, and we got to get out of our own heads. And I'm very grateful that I speak Spanish, but it's been very difficult to get clients to realize, just give them a chance. Like, stop judging a book by its cover. It's a female. I get the, what are you doing on my job site? You have a female out here. She's going to completely stop production. And I literally said, is that a you problem or is that a me problem? So I think it's a you problem. So, so I think that we, as business owners, have to get stronger at pushing back. And so, yes, I'm extremely selective of the clients that I do business with now, because we're supposed to be partners. If it doesn't feel like we're partners, then I'm not going to work that hard for you.
Jennifer, I've let you rest since the first question, but now I'm going to hit you with some questions because I thought you might have chimed in on the unforeseen stuff. One thing that I see on the horizon that could be a problem is the China effect. A lot of people don't realize China, they're getting close to a depression or even worse. Then, of course, you got the nationalist thing going on in China, a war issue, and that could create a real mess real quick. As you look at the world economy, keeping China in mind, we got a war in Ukraine going, we got oil now at $91 a barrel. How do you see all this affecting what we all do in this room? Because to me, that China effect could be the thing that no one's looking at.
I'm glad you said that, because nobody else pays attention to that issue either. What's interesting about China is how they kind of created a situation around the real estate, and now they have huge, towers that nobody's in, and it's really impacting their economy. So, in terms of how that affects where we are in Florida and what we're doing, obviously the biggest thing is going to be supply. The other thing is going to be capital, right? We had so much capital from China flowing in to the country, particularly on the West Coast too, that might dry up and might cause some friction in the capital markets in terms of lending to builders and suppliers and bigger things like that. As far as the consumer, though, I'm really still focusing on what our Fed is doing and how our economy is behaving. The one thing that I was thinking about when everyone was talking about, New York and California. I worked in Silicon Valley for 3 years in economic development, and my whole job was managing the success that the Googles and the Yahoos and all those companies brought to the area. And the affordability issue was very significant there. And I hate to tell you this, but California is where the future comes from, and it's coming here in terms of how we're managing our process of growing up. So Florida has kind of missed out on a lot of the growth over the last 30, 40 years because we're still pretty new. We're hitting our adult years now, and there's some pain that we're all feeling. And these exogenous shocks that we're talking about, China and the Ukraine and oil costs and all that stuff, is just going to be part of the pain that we're feeling as we're growing up.
Do you worry about contagion from, the demographics in China that, this one child thing, the demographics are terrible, the economy looks good, and there's some worry that there could be financial contagion in the United States. Do you worry about that?
As we become more of a global economy, of course, 30, 40 years ago, what happened in China kind of stayed in China and fill in the blank for whatever other country it was. Now we're so interconnected, things, really do kind of impact our economy here. Japan's the other story too. They have a similar preview in terms of their demographics shifting in a certain way and the unsustainability of the way that economy works. But there's a lot of bright spots too. India is becoming more of a power player and things like that. So as our whole, globe kind of changes and works and, we kind of work with how that impacts us as it goes. The really bigger thing, though, that I am concerned about is the impact of climate change on the economy in terms of how are we able to keep manufacturing things when workers are in conditions that are way hotter than they are meant to be in. How do we get things around the countries when there's huge heat waves and people can't work and there's shutdowns related to heat? So heat is actually something that I'm also paying a lot of attention to and how that's going to start impacting our ability to keep growing and producing and demanding goods.
One thing I didn't hear from any panelists, and I guess it's sort of the elephant in the room, this time next year we're going to have a presidential election.
We try to stay away from that.
I know we try to stay away from it, but the fact of the matter is if we looked at 1 year from now, we're going to be 6 weeks away from a presidential election. What do you think the impact of that's going to be on the country and housing? Because you're going to have a lot of negative competing things. Does it make you feel bad, worse, or someone want to grab that one?
I mean, I can grab it. I always talk about the elephant in the
I was
room.
just going to say, Powell's not up for election, so that's the only person in the government that I really pay attention to, and the rest of it.
And most people say he's the one really controlling the economy. Is that your belief?
Absolutely. I mean, I grew up with Greenspan being, the person who, if he coughed a certain way, it would impact the market. I think Powell has a similar kind of power in terms of showing us tea leaves, right, with the economy. So as long as Powell's still around or anybody else who's handling monetary policy, whoever's in the White House doesn't really matter to us, for us.
Well, that's a good thing. Obviously, I mean, to look at what we have as the leadership of our country and the way that they just act is just, I'm sorry, but it just saddens us that we're supposed to be the best country in the world and we have leadership that literally belittle each other and talk about all the negative things. So I wish that we could change our world into where we talk about the actual issues and not each other's issues. This past election, I was very, very nervous about Florida becoming more of a unionized state. That was a very big concern of mine, obviously, with the business that I do, because our current administration is very much about unions. Well, people in the room, I mean, merit shop is where not everybody deserves a trophy. Not everybody deserves to make the same wages. And if you take away that, I feel like it would change Florida's demographics completely. The good thing is that he's at the ending of his presidencies, and it does not feel like the unionization of Florida has really happened per se. But I'm terrified if the next person's going to have the same viewpoints, and how long are we going to be able to continue to sustain the fact that Florida is not a predominantly union state?
Does it concern you that we do appear to be entering a more pro-union environment in the country now?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it should make everybody worry because, I mean, look at our job sites when they're based on Davis-Bacon wages, they're significantly higher. They're probably 2 and 3 times more. I mean, we have a job going on at Lake Baldwin, which is a certified payroll Davis-Bacon job, and you've got an electrician making, $42 an hour. Well, that's not what normal electricians make per hour. So when you start to see that, you also start to see, well, that's what they think that they deserve moving forward, and that's not necessarily the case. So yes, it does concern me.
This is for all the panelists. If you could think about all the thing that government does to you, let's put it like that, government does to you, whether it's local, whatever, what would be the 1 or 2 policy changes you would implement immediately to help housing? Now, I'm going to start with the builder on the panel, because he probably has not more than 1 or 2. He may have 10 or 20.
Well, before I answer that, just circle back on the election. One thing we see, and Jennifer, you may have some data to support this, and if you don't, just nod your head, is typically we see consumers kind of freeze, right, around elections, and so that's an immediate concern, right, as we know we're going to hit this blip. And then in addition to that, I'd say just wider spanning topics such as immigration, land use, and taxation, it becomes, all impacts every one of us and impacts our buying decisions. So, those are the things I'm most concerned about around any election, right? As far as what I would do with the government, it's great. I kind of tagged some of my team at GOBA with a little bit of, some questions on this, because it's something that we just talk about all the time. And aside from abolishing it, which I think would solve the second part of the question, I'd say, our ask is, man, just adhere to the laws that are put in place. It's amazing that, the government officials, and I'm talking more on a local level, right, local and state level, completely, find ways to just ignore, circumvent, or abuse laws that are put in place ultimately to protect builders, or not protect builders, but protect the consumer ultimately, but would help us in terms of doing business as far as visibility and permitting time, in the way they assess fees, right? So that's the biggest one. I feel like this year we felt we went to help go to Tallahassee and lobby for a number of bills, and a lot of them got passed. But then, next year we'll go back and lobby for amendments to the same bills because someone found a loophole to continue to do what they were doing before we passed, right? So that and then I don't know how we come to terms with every politician I ever talked to is like, how do we get affordable housing? Our first question is what's affordable housing in your mind, right? I think about workforce housing and that first-time buyer, and how do we supply a house for that person? Because right now that's becoming further and further out of reach. We've tried all methods, but a lot of it just has to do with policies that they're passing that are detrimental to the ultimate overall cost of building the house, right? As far as land use and these overarching architectural requirements and things of that sort that don't necessarily add value.
Understand. Deb, what would be the a couple of things you would, if you were the king and you could make changes in government, or queen, excuse me.
I can be the king, it's fine.
That's fine. Whatever you want.
So I definitely think that we need to get a handle on immigration and getting people legally here quicker. I mean, I have employees that, have knocked at my door, and a year later, they still don't have their documents. So I think we need a better process of getting them. Once they become legal, they pay taxes. I mean, there's so many benefits that we're just missing out because we're just not processing it as quickly as it should be. I also would like to see us think about things beyond what we're used to, meaning I feel like the government sector, I hate the way this is about to sound, but I'd like to see some youth in our leadership. I feel like we have leadership should be in their retirement ages, and should not be worried about running a country. I think that they need to go and retire and enjoy their retirement. And I'd like to see some younger people coming into our leadership. I think that will hopefully progress us into some of the issues that we all have. And I would like it to be someone that actually knows how to run a business, because running a country is like running a business, and you got to do it fairly across the board. And I would love to remove the welfare system. If you could teach everybody a trade, you could remove the welfare system, and then hopefully, back in the day, God taught you how to fish, so he was a fisherman. Why can't we teach people a trade or teach people some sort of post-secondary trade, so then therefore they don't have to be in the welfare system? I think that we're missing the boat on that completely.
Mike McCroby.
Deb for president.
She talked about young folks.
I'm not that young. So.
I hear that all the time. Mike?
When I say young, it's in the 50s and 60s.
Oh, okay.
Mid-70s.
Hey, Dan, you hear
That's
that?
a good
50 and
clarification.
60, still young.
Yes, it is still young.
Still young.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on what Thad said about affordable housing. That's my number one focus point. If I could push along a few things, we need to be very aggressive, whether it be through tax benefits, incentives, whether it's through the builders or through the first-time home buyers. I would want to really put a lot of focus on that area, because I do believe that we need to get as many people moved into homes and have ownership as we possibly can. It could also be through, increasing the loan limits on the government-backed loans. I mean, there's a lot of ways we could get there, I think, but I think just strategically saying 1, 2, or 3 things, let's make this a focus point for the next 3 to 5 years, and let's see how that helps move the economy forward with that segment of the buyers.
Jennifer, from your standpoint, Realtors, what governmental changes would you make?
Property insurance. The thing that is an issue with that, and hate to sound like your resident Swiftie, but it's really impacting our reputation. And I'm not just talking about our reputation for people wanting to migrate here, but I'm talking about our ability to attract companies. And that's, like I said before, it's a really big issue for companies looking to expand. They're kind of rethinking that equation because they can't find housing that their workforce can work in and live in. And so we're going to start to lose our draw from an attraction standpoint for companies. And people dealing with just the reputation of high property insurance that's 3 times what the national average is really going to impact people's confidence in being here. And again, that kind of speaks to the climate change concern too that we face. The other thing that I would want to address is, the antiquated zoning that we have. It's not enough to just build new houses in exurban locations, but it's also about being able to do high-density infill in places where people already want to be, near the good schools, near the jobs, and things like that. But as I said, Florida has a hard time with our growing pains right now, and a lot of places have issues with density, and there's a lot to be said for the YIMBY complex, right? Yes, in my backyard. We want to get people more excited about bringing density, bringing workforce into places where we're already having people live, and diversifying what our neighborhoods look like, and just allowing for a little bit more, modern zoning and modern neighborhoods and cities.
And that goes back to what you said, Thad. Don Vicio?
Yeah, to piggyback on what Jennifer said, I was reading that New Zealand has had some success with migrating from low-density to mid-density housing. You could eliminate a lot of the impact fees. Certainly, it helps the affordability issue. So I think there's a lot of benefit to getting to, I think we were moving there pre-COVID, and then during COVID, we went the opposite way, and everybody wanted to be alone and be out in low density. But I think that mid-density and mixed-use housing is really, could be a part of the solution of the affordability issue that we've all spoken about.
Jennifer, for the next few minutes and for the rest, we're going to start talking about what we're looking forward to for the next few months in the year. But one thing, you look at a lot of numbers in housing, especially here in Florida. Tell this group what numbers over the next year should we pay most attention to? In other words, you say, if you really looked at this one or two numbers, that'll tell you the whole story about Florida.
That's a good question. So the typical big three that we always look at and the media always reports is the median sale price, the number of closed sales, and number of active listings on the market. And that gives you the basic temperature of what's going on. Do we have a lot of people closing deals? Are there a lot of relief coming from people listing? And what's the price at? The one thing I would kind of have you also start to pay attention to is new listings, because that's people who are feeling confident about selling and entering into the market. And like I said, that's kind of the relief valve for the rest of the process, right? But then month supply of inventory is going to be important to figure out where we are with that balance, right? And figuring out, do we have a shift in who's kind of holding more of the cards? So right now we know that sellers are holding the cards, but they aren't holding as many as they did 18 months ago. But it's still not anywhere close to calling it a buyer's market yet. So being able to keep an eye on that metric in particular will help you know which side of the equation is going to have more of an advantage.
And I have to ask this because you've brought it up a couple times. You're one of the youngest people in this room, maybe the youngest. But I do find it fascinating that you brought up climate change. And for a lot of folks in this room, there's many in this room, quite frankly, don't believe it's an issue. I'm beginning to get on your side, quite frankly. But for younger buyers and younger people, do you see climate change as it relates to housing
100%.
being a bigger issue?
Yeah, I have had a lot of peers who have left certain markets because of climate change concerns. People who are moving out of Denver because of heat, people are moving out of parts of Florida for the same reason. And the issue that we're paying attention to as it relates to housing is what that does to the value of properties. So beachfront obviously has a higher value right now. We don't foresee that being the case 20, 30 years from now as climate change potentially changes what our coasts look like. But besides sea level rise, what the real big issue, like I mentioned before, is heat. In Phoenix, Arizona, they've hired their first heat officer, and I anticipate more governments hiring positions like that to help mitigate the impact that heat has not only on residents but on the workforce and the ability to continue to be able to manufacture at the levels that we are today without workers dying in hot factories.
And for you, Deb, heat on the job site has become a big issue. It's a big issue with OSHA. How are you dealing with it?
Absolutely. The sad thing is the heat cases are actually more when they get home, where their body just doesn't readjust to the temperature that it's, and they have issues once they're already off of the job site. The heat issue has been this way in Florida. I will tell you that this is probably the hottest summer we have ever had. And it seems like every year we get a little bit hotter. It doesn't seem like there's any relief on that. Making sure that you educate your employees to know when they need, when you stop sweating, it's an issue. So one thing that also affects our industry dramatically that I don't think anybody really talks about is our suicide rate. We talk about OSHA and our four, the falls caught between those. OSHA talks about the major four. We lost 600 people in 2021 to the fatal four. We lost almost 6,000 to suicide. So I think with the health issues, then you have mental issues that come with it as well. So I think they're all related to one another, and we just need to get better about talking about topics that are not so easy to talk about.
Our last question of the day, and once again, thank you, panel. You've been absolutely wonderful. But before me is 5 people. This is an all-star panel. If you added all the salaries, it's millions of dollars worth of salaries sitting up there. For the next 10 minutes or so, you're the consultants for this room. We all have a business to run between now and next year. Give me your best advice, your best business advice for the next 12 months for all these people in the room.
I can start it because I was the last one talking. Pay attention to your people. Stop being a CEO that sits in your office or isn't present or isn't engaged. Start spending time with your people. That is my biggest thing. That is what I do every single day. My number one job is making sure my people are happy, making sure I have the right people in the right seats.
Let me ask something. Is respect more important today than ever before?
Absolutely. I do believe it is. And they have to trust you. And if you're untouchable or unapproachable, they don't trust you. I mean, I walk job sites every single day because I want to make sure that they understand that I don't have a job and I don't have a company if it's not for them. And I thank them every day. And be present, be engaged. We've done a lot of seat changing because we've realized that people excel in other areas and they're just in the wrong seats. Most employers would just let them go. Well, you're not doing well, so we're just going to let you go. Maybe they're not doing well because we didn't notice that they were much better as an estimator versus a project manager, or whatever the situation is. I think leaders need to lead, and what I mean by that is be present. Be with your employees, take care of your employees. I mean, we do 100% health benefits we pay for because it's hugely important. I didn't know how important it was until my people started telling me, like, there's no other company that has done that for us. And to me, I thought it was just the right thing to do. So listen to your people, be approachable, let them come to you when they have issues, but take those conversations. Don't be offensive or offended or defensive. Listen to them.
Thad, what would be your advice to this room full of business people?
Well, you know, Debbie nailed that as far as being, I think, people-focused, people-centric. At the end of the day, we can make as many machines and automate as many things as we want, but in my experience, it's, you know, the amount, all the homes that we've built have been on the backs and efforts of hardworking people, men and women, a lot of you guys in this room, and people that work for you, right? When the chips are stacked against you, and, you know, which it seems to be every year there's a new set of circumstances. It's been, you know, their drive, you know, keeping them motivated, showing appreciation to them, but ultimately, you know, their drive that's made all of us successful in this room, right? And so, you know, staying people focused. In addition to that, you know, I think just being adaptable, right? You know, there's a lot of things we can try to predict. We talked about how bad builders are at planning, but I can assure you we plan. But what I can tell you is I think the ones that are going to be most successful are the ones that can adapt when the unforeseen happen. And we've had a lot of those unforeseens, right? You know, we can plan on hurricanes. They happen every year, right? We can work around that. We know rain's going to come. All right, we know it's going to be hot, you know, but there's a lot of other factors. So I think just being adaptable, right? When the pandemic hit, I watched, and I was part of, at the time working for a public builder, us getting together and saying, okay, let's rate all of our assets as far as future developments to, you know, properties that we have that we can, you know, go and build on. Let's rate them all, and then we're going to draw a line and determine what we're going to offload. And I watched every other builder do that to some extent, except for one that really sticks out in my head. And they were going and scooping up properties, right? Like you know, they went a different path. And sure enough, when things just exploded, you know, they were even further ahead of everyone else than they were before. So I think, you know, being adaptable, adjusting to change, adapting to change. And then, obviously, we need to hydrate, guys. It's hot out there.
Okay. Don Vicio?
Well, my three things are: one, stay close to your customer. Really be involved with them. Keep your arms around them. Understand what their true needs are and try to supply them those things. Same thing with your key business constituents, suppliers, lenders, whatever they may be. Debbie and Thad nailed it. The real part is your employees. You take care of the people that take care of your customer. Have a genuine concern for them, their wellness, understand, listen to them. And then the last one is just be nimble and flexible. I mean, we're operating in an environment today that we've never operated in. Don't rely on, you know, what you've done in the past. It doesn't matter. You need to be nimble, not have paradigms of what's worked in the past and traditions. You've got to think about, you know, where the business is going tomorrow. So really, it's those three things: customers, employees, and be willing to change.
Well, you're sort of talking about the old school method of doing business. Mm-hmm. Because of the legal system, cost of lawyers at $400 plus an hour, the length to get things done, have we gone to a system now where you have to have more trust? Because if you try to sue someone, you're looking at 2 years before you get in court. Mm-hmm. So essentially, haven't we gone back to an old school? You have to trust the people you're doing business with?
Very much so, and I've said it many, many times in my career. I've got the best job in the world, and people say, what do you do? I sell dead trees. But we do it on a handshake, right? At the end of the day, I mean, most of the business we transact is not done via contract. It's done, you know, two people looking at each other in the eye, shaking their hand, and making a deal. And they own up to that most of the time. And yeah, so it is getting back to old school and relationships and, you know, the personal touch of this business.
Jennifer, give us some good advice. You're the young, bright economist in the room.
Thank you.
You are.
I appreciate that. So I have a soft spot in my heart for local government. As much trouble as local government can cause, they also can be part of the change if we learn how to engage with the pressure that they're under as well. So in terms of things that we talk about wanting to change, zoning being one of them, that's actually an actionable thing that people can get involved in. And it's real simple, just getting involved with what's happening in your local market and understanding, you know, what are the zoning issues and is the city manager perceptive to updating those? And what are the pressures that the government is facing that prevents them from moving forward with a lot of these changes that you wouldn't understand it based on how they're behaving today, but a lot of city managers are thinking about how can we push density? How can we incentivize builders to you know, do infill redevelopment. So really trying to understand the pressure that government is facing and engaging with them, either, you know, personally, if you want to have, you know, take a city manager out to lunch type of thing, or if it's getting involved with community meetings, or just participating in a charrette or something that's happening if you guys are going through a community redevelopment period, things like that. So just try to get engaged. When things are slow, the time to build your network is then, right? So that you can tap it when you don't need it. Or tap it before you need it, I guess, and build it before, you know, you really need to lean into it. So.
But Mike, you're with a multi-billion-dollar company, so your advice is obviously going to be one of the best.
Well, you know, the greatest thing about this industry is that regardless of where we are, the culture and the focus points are all pretty much the same. And, you know, I'm checking off my list as I hear everybody else talking. That's even, it's more comforting and confirming that, you know, we are a business of people, correct? I had 2 points down, and the first was just communication. We can all work to improve our communication, whether it's with our people, our manufacturers, our builders, our customers. And as we are in these uncertain times, that's got to be our biggest focus. I heard not managing from the chair. That's something that we preach throughout our company on a weekly basis. You got to be out, you got to be on the floor, you got to be in the field. You know, when it comes to that, I think forecasting, we talked about it a little bit earlier, we have to communicate at that level so we know what the supply and the demand trick's going to be as we move forward. The other one is just a focus on efficiency and productivity. You know, we all can take a step back, look at how we operate, try to find ways to get better, challenge ourselves, challenge our people in the right way to make sure that we are as efficient as we can be. That allows us to be, I heard, flexible and adaptable, correct? That's exactly what that is, but it has to be important, and you have to benchmark it. And what we've learned is we get the most productive ideas from the folks doing the work. But you've got to listen, you've got to be engaged. And, you know, you can take one idea from one area and implement it above a broader group of folks, and it's amazing to see the improvement that will come from that.
Thank you so much. Well, I want to thank each one of our panelists, and at this time, I'd like the audience to express their gratitude. Thank you for participating. You have done a great job.